Good morning. Welcome to our board members, today's presenters, and to all viewing our meeting remotely. I will now call this regular meeting of the Kentucky Board of Education to order. Today's meeting is being conducted by video teleconference, and I have a few announcements about conducting virtual meetings. This meeting must comply with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. Therefore, Kentucky Board of Education members participating virtually must ensure that their video is streaming and that they can be seen throughout the duration of the meeting. Members, please mute your microphone when not talking. However, remember that all discussions must be broadcast to the public, so be sure that your microphone is not on mute when you do speak. Every time you speak during the meeting, please unmute your microphone, state your name, and take a short pause. For any items that require a vote, a roll call will be necessary to record the vote of each member. At that time, the member should state his or her name, pause, and then state, "I vote yes," or "I vote no." As a reminder, please silence or turn off other electronic devices that may cause disruption to your sound feed. Now I will read the Kentucky Board of Education mission statement. To improve the future of all Kentucky learners by providing leadership, advocating for resources, advancing policy, and cultivating community partnerships to ensure each and every student has equitable access to high quality lifelong learning. Dr. Jones, will you please now provide an announcement and then call the roll?
Thank you, Chair Robinson. I do have an announcement. We have been alerted that today, March 4 at 10:07 a.m. Eastern, a severe weather announcement will be broadcast over our building's PA system. This is a drill. We have been, it's possible that you may, in your areas of the Commonwealth, may also hear that drill announcement again at 10:07 a.m. Eastern Time. We have been told to proceed with the meeting. I will now call the roll. When I state your name, please say present and state your name again. Holly Bloodworth.
Holly Bloodworth, present.
Harold McKinney.
Harold McKinney here.
Justin Pate.
Justin Pate here.
Julie Pyle.
Julie Pyle, present.
Randy Poe.
Here.
Sharon Robinson.
Sharon Robinson here.
Lee Todd.
Lee Todd here.
Steve Trimble.
Steve Trimble present.
Lou Young.
Lou Young, present.
Harper Blake. Alfonso de Torres Nunez.
Alfonso de Torres Nunez, present.
Secretary Jamie Link. President Aaron Thompson. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Today's topic of discussion, and board learning is focused on standards, assessment, and student performance related to science. This topic was requested by members of the board and relates to board identified goals, particularly opportunities to advance educational excellence through continuous professional improvement and fostering education innovation. I will also mention that this board discussion continues our laser-like focus on all facets of student achievement. I now welcome Commissioner Fletcher to introduce today's learning focus and the presenters who will guide our conversation.
Thank you, Chair Robinson. And again, with direction and input from our board leadership, today's conversation and board learning is designed for KBE members to discuss their priorities and ask questions. The conversation will be guided by KDE Associate Commissioner, Dr. Jennifer Stafford, and KDE Chief Academic Officer, Mickey Ray Marinelli. Chief Academic Officer Marinelli will review the Kentucky Academic Standards for Science, the standards review process, and highlight nationwide challenges in implementing science high-quality instructional resources and current agency-wide efforts to maximize the benefit of grade-level science instruction to accelerate progress towards proficiency. Dr. Stafford will then provide an overview of federal and state assessment requirements and how Kentucky meets those requirements. The presentation will include a focus on the alignment of the Kentucky Summative Assessment and the Kentucky Alternate Assessment to the Kentucky Academic Standards and overview of current assessment design and test item types. Dr. Stafford will also review highlights of student performance in science on the KSA and ACT and summarize the last Kentucky administration of the National Assessment of Education Progress, affectionately known as NAEP, in science. She will also address the state's transition to the SAT and address how the SAT reports science-related performance with the analysis and science score. I'm also pleased to welcome today's meeting representatives from Graves County Public Schools, who will share about their local efforts to implement K-12 high-quality science instruction and its impact on student growth there in Graves County. Dr. Jones will email an exit slip after today's meeting to provide board members with further opportunity to seek clarification on any information or address questions you may have based on today's discussion. All comments and questions are welcome, and Dr. Jones will coordinate the necessary follow-up with our KDE staff. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Jennifer Stafford.
Thank you, and good morning. Good morning, board members, Chair Robinson and other board members. Glad to be here with you today. For the board's second learning session in this new digital format, members have requested a focus on science. Members submitted questions back in December, and those questions are the basis of our presentation. Chief Academic Officer Marinelli and I will go through the slides in this presentation. And then members of Graves County will also be able to share their experiences in their initiative towards science. Before we get started, I do want to just call your attention to a couple of resources that are in your board portal. The first is this presentation that is being displayed. This is the one we'll use to present and talk us through the different levels of topics. And the other slide deck is around the data. Now, this is a similar format that we used earlier in February, and it has, again, the most recent performance data on science. So if you'll look for those in your board portal, and also there are other resources around sample items for both the Kentucky Summative Assessment and the SAT. So those materials are in your board portal. Dr. Jones, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So as we look at science education in Kentucky, we have to begin with the Kentucky Academic Standards, because those are where we have the minimum expectations of what students should know and be able to do. And as we go through those, we'll also look at the assessments and what's required in assessments, both federally and in state statutes, as well as some resources that are available. The Kentucky Summative Assessment, we'll dive into it, as well as the Kentucky Alternate Summative Assessment. Look at a little bit of student performance, as the commissioner said, look at efforts of growth in that science and share the experiences, and then talk about the transition to SAT and future of assessments. Dr. Jones, if you'll go to the next slide. So we want to start our conversations and ground those in the actions that the board can take. Now, this is similar to the slide that you saw in February. And these are some general conversations or general actions that the board can take. And during our February discussion, board member Julia Piles mentioned that we need to have foster deep conversation and ask deep questions. So you'll notice that action has been taken on this slide, as well as the conversation that's happening today. Other steps that the board can take is raise awareness, having, again, conversation that spotlights topics and focuses on specific areas. Always advocate for funding. And as a reminder, in December, Dr. Foster shared how her team and the efforts that she and her team are having with the support of funds for schools that were on the verge of federal classification, and how those efforts have improved student performance. Other actions, highlighting the importance of opportunity and access and emphasizing the need for high quality, high level instructional experiences for all students. Promoting evidence-based practices, and Mickey's going to show some evidence-based practices and provide things that are showing promise. Supporting collaboration, and this is a lot of the conversation around the Kentucky United We Learn initiative, and supporting that partnerships among schools, districts, and the community, families, parents, and students in shared goals on student achievement. If we'll go to the next slide, please. So I'll turn it over to Chief Academic Officer Mickey Marinelli at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Stafford, and good morning, members of the board. We're going to start today just by grounding us in where we are with our current timeline for our standards review for science specifically. So on the next slide, you'll see that the current standards, the ones that are in law at the moment, were approved by the board in December of 2022. They became effective in July of 2023, and they began implementation in schools and districts in August of 2023. So they're not scheduled to be reviewed again unless there is some sort of statutory requirement that we do so earlier until 28-29. So we have more time to make an investment in the professional learning and in the resources being utilized aligned to the current version of our standards. On the next slide, you'll see that the review committee and the advisory panels, and those are made up again of practicing teachers, of our higher education partners, and business and community members. So they established 5 guiding principles that are meant to inform the way that the Kentucky Academic Standards for Science were developed and are to be implemented. So I want to point out just 3 bullets specifically. So the second bullet in the first column, there is the intent that there is K through 12 alignment across all of the standards, and that they would build in a developmental way and progress across all grade levels, K through 12. In the second column at the top, there's an understanding and an acknowledgement that students need sustained opportunities to work with and to develop understanding that's aligned to these standards. So not just over a period of weeks or months, not sporadically, but truly over a period of years. And that development will support them in beginning to not only have knowledge of science, but to be able to do and apply scientific learnings. And then the last bullet in the second column, there is the expectation that teachers will have access to ongoing high quality science professional learning and resources that are aligned to the standards and support grade level learning for high quality science education. On the next slide, I just wanted to remind you of the architecture. Oh, and standards at a glance. Thank you for that. I'll go to that. So first, our CAS places equal importance on knowing and doing science. So you can see there in the first bullet, it's important that students not only master important science concepts, but that they're engaging in those disciplinary practices to do the science. Secondly, students are to engage with science and engineering practices and cross-cutting concepts. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. For number 3, there is the understanding that students will be engaging in core science ideas. And you can see there in the top of that second column, there are 3 disciplinary lenses. So physical science, life science, and earth and space science. And that's in addition to those engineering practices. And then lastly on this slide, students are intended to engage with those engineering design processes to be able to apply science core ideas. But I think even more importantly, to be able to think about problem solving and how to use that knowledge of science in a transferable way to the real world problems that they engage, not only as students, but over the course of their academic career and well beyond into their life. Okay, the next slide is the architecture. So I want to be able to revisit this with you. So you can see at the top, we have the performance expectation. So that's the actual standard. But for each standard, there's a clarification statement and then also that assessment boundary that guides the work that Dr. Stafford's team does with the advisory panel and review committee. Below, you can see the connections for this standard to the science and engineering practices. You'll sometimes hear those referred to as SEPs. We speak so much in our acronyms. The second column there, the middle one, is the disciplinary core ideas, or DCIs, as you'll sometimes hear that referred to. And then lastly, we have the cross-cutting concepts with that CCC abbreviation that you may hear over the course of the presentation or in conversations with science teachers across the state. So that's a little bit about where we are with Science Review. Again, we will be utilizing the existing standards until we begin the review process, which would start in 28-29. So Dr. Stafford, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And let's look now at the statutorily mandated requirements for assessments for both the federal as well as the state. So next slide. So board members who have been on the board for a while have seen this graphic. We've presented it multiple times in relation to what is required statutorily. You can see on the first column on the left is the ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. That's our federal statutes that guide requirements for state testing. You'll see in the center column the state statutes, and then on the right-hand column, how that Kentucky satisfies and meets these requirements. So the first line there, the first row, is on reading and math and its requirements for federal and state. For reading and math, it's grades 3 through 8 and once at grade level 9 through 12. And you can see that for the Kentucky Revised Statutes, what's required is a criterion referenced assessment. And then how we meet that is the Kentucky Summative Assessment and the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment based on our Kentucky academic standards. The focus, though, for this conversation is that center row, that second row that's around science. A general science assessment is required at least once for each grade span by the ESSA. So that each grade span is 3 through 5, 6 through 9, and 10 through 12. And the ESSA requires that each state that seeks Title I funding, Part A, must implement a statewide set of assessments to meet these requirements so that we can then access those funds. As far as the state statutes, it's a criterion referenced assessment in science that is administered once per grade span. And we meet those statutory requirements with the Kentucky Summative Assessment as well as the Kentucky Academic or Alternate Assessment. And for science, it is administered again once per grade band to meet that statutory requirement at grades 4, 7, and 11. And you can see the third row there is aligned to the alternate assessments and those alternate achievement standards. And how we meet those is through the alternate Kentucky summative assessment. The next slide. This next
Jennifer,
slide.
before you go to the next slide, would you just give us like 2 sentences on what criterion referenced assessment really means and how it distinguish it from a norm reference standardized test, just to make sure we're all on the same page?
Great. Thank you for that good question, Chair Robinson. A criterion reference assessment is based on our Kentucky academic standards. We create those. It's a customized assessment that is has particular performance level standards that all students can meet the higher levels of performance. It is developed by performance standards around novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished. Whereas a normative assessment is based on a distribution. The scoring is based on a distribution of scores and how students score in relation to each other.
In other words, on a criterion referenced assessment, every student can be successful, but by definition, please understand, on a norm referenced assessment, that's really not possible because the assessment is more or less constructed to produce a distribution of scores.
That's correct. And you'll see that with your assessments that are predictive in nature, or they're trying to determine certain levels of readiness.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The next slide. So this next slide is in relation to this conversation. The ESSA does not require a college admissions exam. However, Kentucky does. Kentucky goes beyond the minimal level of testing required by the U.S. Department of Education and requires a college admissions exam to assess English, reading, mathematics, and science in the spring. And the way that we have met that currently is with the SAT, and previously we have had the ACT as our college readiness assessment. Other requirements for ESSA require and include an English language proficiency assessment for all learners K through 12, and an alternate Kentucky or an alternate ELP assessment. And our Kentucky statute identifies that the Board of Education shall add any other components necessary for the Every Student Succeeds Act and meeting it as determined by the Department of Education. And the current assessment that we have to meet those ELP assessments is the WIDA Access screener, the Access Placement Test, and those alternate access for Ls in grades K through 12.
Hey, Jennifer.
Yes.
This is Justin.
Hi, good morning.
Don't we have other assessments in that top line that can be used for the college admissions examination, such as Coyote in math and some of the other assessments available for English reading and science?
So
Or
those
is
are
it only SAT?
so for this requirement, this is an assessment requirement that the state provide a college admissions exam that we have went through the procurement process and secured the SAT through College Board. Now, there are other ways to meet the accountability for demonstration of transition or post-secondary readiness. And that's where you get to utilize your other types of assessments when you're trying to demonstrate the student have met post-secondary readiness or transition readiness through our accountability system. And those are, as you've mentioned, the ACT, the SAT, Coyote, Ed Ready. There are multiple ways to demonstrate that the student has either met academic readiness or career readiness.
But because it's on this assessment requirement, Dr. Pate, this means that every junior will take the college admissions exam. The others are alternative options.
For that accountability. So
Gotcha.
there's a separation. There's assessment, and this is the assessment in the assessment system, in the requirements, both federal and state, for students to test. Accountability is separate, and accountability are those components such as that we hold schools accountable for state assessment results in reading and math, state assessment results in science, social studies, and writing. Currently, we have transition readiness, the graduation rate, the climate and safety survey indicator. Those are those indicators of accountability. Those are
Dr.
two
Stafford,
separate
if I
systems.
may add, we have and it's a great question, Dr. Pate, when you look at transition readiness as a part of those, just like Dr. Stafford pointed out, one of the, those different components that we have in the formula for the overall index, transition readiness it's a certain percentage, like 20%. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Of the high school accountability measure. So what percentage of your seniors meet a transition readiness requirement? You can get that through the ACT still, or the SAT, or dual credit. If students get dual credit, that's also a checkbox, then yes, that's transition ready too. So there's the actual state test. We have to give a state test as a college admissions exam. That's required. The other part is that can be used for the transition readiness part, but also can industry certifications. Also, you can use dual credit. You can use ACT scores, which I think were, I want to say 18, 19, 20, and I think the SAT is like 1490. Dr. Stafford, help me with that one. I'm still learning the SAT. So I think there's different points that we have as far as getting that checkbox. So if you have 80 out of 100 of your seniors to check one of those boxes, then your index is essentially 80%.
Right. But for the purpose of this one, it needs to be a little more normed across the board. Therefore, you can't have a hodgepodge of different tests used. Gotcha.
Yep.
That's correct. And I believe those because we're learning as well. And Kristen Roseberry is in the office with me. It's $490 for for the reading and writing, and $510 for math. Good questions. Do we have any others at this point before we move on? Okay. Dr. Jones, the next slide, please. Okay, so let's dig into, so we have these different assessments. We have the Kentucky Summative Assessment and the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment that meets those federal requirements of a science content test. And then we also have the SAT, or that meets the state statutory requirement of a college admissions exam. And did I see a hand up? Did I miss a hand up there?
My question was on a criterion reference test. Can you clear up if SAT or not the SAT, but back to our state testing. If a criterion test, if every student actually scored 100, do they actually remove that item? That was the question before the criterion test versus the normative, but still on a criterion test versus a standard-based test, every student can't get 100 and they accept that question. Is that correct, or is that false?
So
or do they renorm that?
So there's different levels of items. There's different depth of knowledge items that are on assessments. You have a variety of levels of student of expectations on each of your items. So there are questions that have a lower DOK level that students would be expected to be able to present and know. There's other items on your assessments that distinguish between higher level order thinking and students who are able to get to those higher level skills levels. So there's a variety of items. If an item is performing well, it will distinguish between the students. And but because students, I think you're trying to get to if an item, if every student gets the item correct, is that automatically removed from your assessment? And we would not do that unless the item demonstrated it was a bad item in a different way. And so
But I'm just thinking, I mean, I think that's for people to understand, because I think when people think of a criterion reference test, a lot of people think of it as a standards-based test, that I teach this concept and the student knows it or does not know it. In a criterion reference test, if what I'm hearing is correct, that you are doing a level that you're trying to distinguish between the learning. So even though a student may know a particular topic, they may not get this particular question correct, because we're trying to distinguish between a distinguished, a proficient student. So there's not just a cut score that says this student is proficient or distinguished, because we're trying to separate in groups. Is that not correct? I'm having a hard time understanding that we don't do a standardized test where a teacher in a classroom, a test on material, and students could all get 100. We're not trying to test to see whether they know that knowledge. We're trying to distinguish between the students based on their knowledge.
So with a criterion reference test, students can meet the standard. There's not a bar, if you will, that says that 100% of students cannot be proficient, because in a criterion reference test, that in theory is possible. It's possible in a criterion reference test that all students could demonstrate that they are distinguished. So a criterion reference test has a standard in which students that are set before the students test, and all students can meet those standards. Or in a norm reference test, there's a distribution of students, and their performance is compared to other students, so that there is a distribution of students and their performance. Does that help? So the criteria, the criteria reference.
I think people are thinking that in a criterion test that the teachers teach these standards that we have, and we're measuring these standards when we're truly not measuring knowledge, but we're measuring the particular standard, not the knowledge that kids know.
So in your criterion referenced test,
I guess I'll wait till we get to the science, because when we get to the science example questions, for example, it says the best answer is A, but you could have had potentially answered A or B and still met a particular standard, but one answer was better than the other answer. And I'll just wait till we get there. That's to clarify that question, because I think people think in a criterion reference test that it's same as a teacher-driven test in a classroom, and it's not. It's totally designed differently to get a distinguished level, a proficient level, a novice level, and an apprentice level in that particular question, that it's A, B, C, or D. It's not that I just know that material, period. It's how I know that material. It's confusing, I know. And I know you explained the difference between criterion and the others based on those definitions, but I think in the design of the question is where people have a difference of the understanding how they design the questions. Okay, but I'll leave it at that. I'll let you go on.
So just one more comment is that with criterion reference test, each person or each student's performance is compared directly to the standard, and that's the achievement standard, without considering the performance of students and how other students have reported and performed on the test. So there's a performance level that students can meet regardless of what how other students perform. And criterion reference tests oftentimes have cut scores, and that define that level of either proficient, distinguished, apprentice, or novice.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's
so
what
good.
I guess, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Based
Yes.
on a rubric, you have a 4, a 3, a 2, and a 1. And basically a distinguished is 4, 3 is proficient, and so forth. So it doesn't, I guess what I'm trying to say, a lot of people will look at reading on grade level and say that you only got 40% of our kids reading on grade level, okay? But it doesn't really distinguish between the fact that 30% of that 40% could be close to the next level with 1 or 2 questions. It's not that they had to have 25 more. I think people just don't understand what criterion reference testing actually is. They think of it as a teacher test that they have 10 questions on the board and the kids get the 10 questions. They either get it or they don't. It's not devised by a rubric that this answer is better than the other student's answer is better than the others. You're not saying the other students, but based on a rubric, it's a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1. And that's how you get distinguished, proficient, novice, or apprentice levels based on that 4, 3, 2, 1 rubric on a grading of a score. That's why I said when we get to the science and we have a question in front of us, that one question is what they're saying is the best question. That would get a student a distinguished on that question. There's another answer that would get that student, if they didn't choose A, if they chose B, might get them proficient because it's a proficient answer, but it's not the distinguished answer.
We really
Or
don't.
how do we come up
apply-
with proficient, distinguished,
Yeah.
and that?
We
That's
don't-
what I'm trying to get.
We don't really
and
apply the
understand.
performance levels to the individual questions. So that may be confusing, Jennifer, just a little bit. So they get a rating on the question, but it is the complete test, at which point they fall into the performance level categories.
But they're
That's
getting a point on each question that comes up with that total score at the end based on
Correct.
each individual question that they're taking.
Right.
Correct.
So each
Okay,
question.
that's what
Yeah.
I'm just trying to explain to people. I think people just think that they either get this right or they get this wrong, and at the end of it, they're there. No, it's a scoring between all questions. Okay, I understand it. I just think a lot of people do not understand that what we're talking.
Right. So each item has a number of points that are available, 0 to 4, and that the student could, depending on what type of question it is, it could have up to 4 and I'm speaking specifically about the Kentucky Summative Assessment. And so those, the amount of score points that a student gets within that content test then is taken, and those cut scores then are applied to a scale score And those scale scores then translate to those cut scores for
Okay.
novice, apprentice, proficient, distinguished. Does that help, Randy? Oh,
Muted.
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Jennifer, can I ask one
Yeah,
quick question?
Anyway, in answer to that, yes, it does. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank-
That's what I was trying to get at, so people understand it's not just that one question or so. Thank you.
Just a quick question, Jennifer. When it comes to multiple choice tests, are some questions weighted heavier than the others? When it comes to multiple choice, or is it a simple 1, yes, it's correct, or 0, it's not?
It's a simple 0 or 1.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's move into more details around the Kentucky Summative Assessment and alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment. So Dr. Jones, next slide. So these tests for the summative assessment and the alternate summative assessment are customized. And what that means is that our vendors create an assessment just for Kentucky based on the Kentucky academic standards. So we have currently our assessment vendor for the Kentucky Summative Assessment is Pearson, and for the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment, it's UK. We work collaboratively with the vendors and educators across the Commonwealth to develop these assessments for Kentucky that are focused on the Kentucky academic standards. So earlier, Chief Academic Officer Marinelli described the focus areas. So for the Kentucky academic standards, the assessment is aligned specifically to our Kentucky academic standards. So when developing any assessment, but particularly the science assessment, we're looking at the Kentucky academic standards, and educators are brought in to help develop those items around the Kentucky academic standards. For science, the focus are those areas that Mickey identified in those disciplinary core ideas, those cross-cutting concepts, and those science and engineering practices. So we're looking at not only the content knowledge on the KSA and AKSA, but we're looking at application and inquiry and problem solving in this assessment. And you'll note here the graphic. It really, when educators come together to write items and develop items for this assessment, they're really looking at integrating the practices, the knowledge, those disciplinary core ideas, as well as those cross-cutting concepts on the Kentucky academic summative assessment. And again, this is utilized for state and federal testing. And then the KSA and AKSA in Chair or Member Pate, this science assessment is used for the state assessment results for science in the accountability system. So this assessment is utilized in the student performance in that accountability indicator of state assessment results for science, social studies, and writing. So that's how this assessment is utilized in the accountability system. Next slide, please. So Mickey mentioned the timeline for the assessments and the updated assessment. We went back to 2015 and looking at the previous Kentucky academic standards, and we aligned the Kentucky summative assessment and alternate summative assessment to those standards. So it was launched initially in 2018-19, and standard setting was then conducted on grades 4 and 7. Then we had field tests at high school in 2020. Now we got that field test in February, late February of 2020. So right before the pandemic, we had the field test for high school, and then came back and had the performance levels and standards setting in 2020. So we were able to get in the field testing on those new types of items in 2020 and utilize those coming out of the pandemic. And then we had the validation in 2022. Now, Mickey mentioned that the most recent update with the academic standards in science was 2023. And we utilized that opportunity to create a new design for the Kentucky Summative Assessment and updated those performance levels in the late 2025. So students in 2025 took a new assessment based on those updated standards in 2023, and we set those new performance level standards on that criterion referenced assessment that set those different cut levels, that identify those different cut scores for students then to be able to be reported on those. Next slide, please. So this slide, I want to tell you, is a slide from that I, along with a consultant from OTL, utilized back in 2016. So don't throw anything away. Don't delete anything, because you may use it again. So when we were developing the system of around science, it was to create a comprehensive system, one that supported the science instruction and measured student progress toward those expectations around the Kentucky academic standards. Now, these assessments, again, I mentioned that were customized, reflect the multidimensional aspects of the academic standards. And so what the emphasis was at that time was to develop a comprehensive system that included a number of types of assessments that gave different information at different time frames for different purposes. So back in 2016, there were hopes to develop classroom embedded assessments through course tasks, as well as the statewide summative assessment. And so this was what the vision was in 2016, but due to challenges, due to changes and other obstacles, the focus has moved away from those other types of assessments toward the Kentucky Summative Assessment, and those the Kentucky Summative Assessment. Next slide, please. So again, we've talked about the fact that it's a criterion referenced assessment utilized to measure Kentucky academic standards. And so I won't hit that part again, but that Kentucky educators across the Commonwealth are deeply engaged in developing the Kentucky Summative Assessment and the alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment. They're involved in every aspect of the development because it is a customized test for Kentucky. So they're involved in the development, revision, and review of the standards, the Kentucky academic standards. Then they're involved in setting the blueprint, and that blueprint is our guide on developing the assessment, as well as it provides information for instructional purposes. So Kentucky educators are deeply involved in developing that, and then taking forward that blueprint and developing items based on those percentages, and then setting those cut points and those standards of achievement. And they define the performance levels for all of our assessments. Next slide, please. Oh, let me stop there. I see a hand up, Dr. Todd.
Tell me again, what is the alternate KSA? What's the difference?
Thank you for that question. The alternate Kentucky Summative Assessment is for the students that participate in the Kentucky Alternate Program. It's the 1% population of students with the lowest cognitive abilities.
Interesting. Okay.
Thank you for that. So our Kentucky Summative Assessment is based on phenomenon. What those are is observable events or processes in the natural world. So things like does ice float, or do volcanoes erupt, or why do they do that? So it's really around phenomena that students bring into or the teachers bring those ideas into the development of the items around the phenomenon. They look for phenomena that is of interest to students, that would pique their interest as they are answering in responding to items on the test. So instead of just asking direct factual questions, the KSA is presented in real world phenomena so that students analyze the different situations, they apply scientific principles, and then they are asked to respond and construct responses and solve problems based on the information that is presented to those. Now, for our summative assessment, it is a cluster-based approach. So a cluster, and you have an example in the board portal of grade 4, that a cluster design is one that students start a cluster and they have a limited amount of information, and then a question may be asked on it. Then more information is presented, such as additional data or graphs or chart, and students then take into consideration this additional information based on that same phenomenon, and then answer additional questions. And so the cluster builds on that information and that experience or that process or event that happens in real life, in real world. So it is a cluster-based approach that is designed to have information, and slowly the student would gather more information around that topic. And again, those clusters are designed around that multidimensional science and engineering practices, cross-cutting concepts, and then those disciplinary core ideas. Dr. Todd?
How many teachers teach by this method across the state? And how many do the typical lecture presentation?
I'd have to ask Mickey to respond to if teachers are teaching the multidimensionality of the standards.
Dr. Stafford, I think we can say that more and more teachers are moving to this phenomena-based approach. It has taken time. And Dr. Todd, that's why I'm so grateful that we have our friends from Graves County with us today. They're going to speak to their process and transition and sort of shifting to this phenomena-based approach. And then I have several slides that talk about what we believe the resources are that could help teachers to learn about phenomena-based teaching and be able to implement that in alignment to our grade level standards. And so we'll be able to speak more to that as we move forward.
I guess my other question is, the test, was it based on this cluster concept, the assessment that was done recently, And is it possible that the low scores are due to the fact that the test is based on a new approach that a lot of the teachers aren't providing in the classroom?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's a problem. Okay. It sounds great like this, but the implementation side of it, I guess, is where we just have not gotten very far. So, okay, thank you.
You drilled right into the heart of the question in the field, Lee, that into Dr. Marinelli's point from the very beginning. This is a process that's going to take time, not excuses, just time for teachers. And that's the beauty of doing a well-developed assessment, and that instructional practice will follow, but it doesn't immediately follow, of course.
I see another hand up, Randy.
Sorry, yeah, I'm just having technology problems on this end
Oh.
today. So that goes back to like the question I had, and I was trying to get, I guess, clarification and around these scores, and that's what I think Dr. Todd is also asking. Are we in our criterion reference test, and going back to the commissioner's statement, we are using an item response theory when we finish these testing between a 0 and 1. So some tests they get a 0 or 1, but still some are graded higher than others. And one's a distinguished question and one's an easier question, as we're saying. And then ultimately we set cut scores based on that, and that becomes another judgment on these scores. So as Dr. Todd is saying, some kids on this new way of learning, if they're not exposed to the higher level distinguished questions in an IRT thing, they could get a 32 out of a 40, and another student get a 32 out of a 40, but one's distinguished and one's proficient based on how difficult the question of the 32 that they got correct. That you got 32 tougher questions correct than I did. And so my score may be lower. So I may have gotten 32 out of 40, but I'm not considered distinguished. But you could have got 32 out of 40 and you're considered distinguished. So it's about exposure to material and how deeper learning, as we call it, or thriving learning, or whatever we're calling it these days, that a student gets. So the rich instruction in a classroom can provide students with a higher level response answer on their test questions. Is that what we're getting to? I guess Mickey Ray can answer that, or whoever, in relationship to the high quality material that is being presented versus material that is not high quality being presented. That, I don't know. I have a tough time. I'm like Dr. Todd, that our science scores were so low. And I just believe that our science students score better than what our state assessment is saying that they score based on NAEP and some of the other tests that we take. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not.
Randy, I think we also have to take into account that an integrated interdisciplinary approach to science has been kind of out there for some time now in terms of what knowing in science, how you measure knowing in science. It is no longer, it's less of interest at the introduction to what science is, to know geology or to know chemistry or to know physics. The introduction to science is to understand what scientific phenomena impact our lives. And this has been a discussion about learning in science for quite some time. I think measuring this approach has required some of the most interesting developments in assessment technology, if you will. And I do believe that one of the kind of matters kind of standing in the way is that the learning of science at advanced levels tends to be highly disciplinary focused. It is defined by the scientific discipline. But knowing science to teach science, especially at the elementary level, requires a different way of knowing, if you will. This is supposed to help students really be aware of scientific phenomena that, well, I don't need to explain that to you, but I do think that where we are is at a kind of the crux of the matter of how we approach science as an aspect of life that we can manage or not, an aspect of life that we can change or not, but an aspect of life that is crucial to know. It is crucial to understand. So we help students be, frankly, I call it become demystified by science and move away from the notion that only smart people, really smart people, special people know science. We all must know science and we must strive to make it accessible. Now, you know, we have to accept, Randy, that this presents, I think, a lot of confusion between kind of I call it the disciplinary standards around science, where you get more and more expert. We are talking about the knowing of science and being kind of embracing of science because we understand concepts and scientific phenomena that impact our lives, and we are not intimidated by it. So if we have the interest to become more expert in a particular scientific discipline, we are encouraged and able to approach that at the appropriate level of learning. I don't mean to go on and on, but this is kind of
I agree with. I guess I agree with all that. I'm just trying to get to the root of why on our state level testing, our students are doing poorly based on our Kentucky test, but they're not doing as poorly compared to our peers across the nation on other design tests. And I'm just trying to get to an understanding why that is taking place. I'm not opposed to, this is the best way of teaching. I'm not getting at that. I'm trying to get at an understanding of, have we analyzed why our students are not performing very well on our state science tests, but perform well on national based tests from criterion to norm reference tests, but aren't performing as well on our state tests? And is there a design problem? And I don't know that. I'm trying to understand from our experts on why we have this gap and this disconnect. And I guess that's what I want to get to is, why are we where we are, and how do we move forward from where we are? That's the fundamental question.
That is the crucial question. And so I'm going to ask Dr. Stafford and Marinelli to kind of move us forward, because our guests from Graves County are with us. And we do want to hear from their experience, because I think that actually gets to the point of how we move this into teaching, into actual practice. So Jennifer, you want to finish up, or are we ready to have Dr. Marinelli introduce our guests from Graves County?
So just one statement in response to Randy's is that the ACT, or a national prepared college readiness exam, and the Kentucky Summative Assessment, they measure different things, so they produce different outcomes. The ACT is a college readiness assessment compared to students that test statewide, while the Kentucky Summative Assessment measures how well students are mastered Kentucky's grade level standards. And because they have different purposes, they're designed different, they're scored different, their results are expected not to match. So I did see a couple of hands have been lowered. So if we'll go to the next slide, or no, I see Dr. Fletcher.
I want to make a comment to Dr. Todd's point, and we're talking about how can we bring more teachers on board. And I want to mention, for example, All In for Ag. The department here has partnered with our agriculture group with Commissioner Shell, and we've helped develop phenomenon cluster-based units, if you will. Like, for example, two of the ones that we developed was around erosion and around also around pollination that was implemented in the elementary. So we're trying to put out more information and more like teacher resources so that, hey, here's a unit that's designed for a phenomenon or a based assess or for a phenomenon, and let's let kids do investigations. Let them get their hands dirty, if you will, and then have an event at the end where they can present. So again, more of a vibrant learning type feel, but that serves as an example for teachers to help them develop their own phenomenon-based assessments and also those type of units. So again, the more that we do that, the more this is going to grow and help our teachers get into that where they're analyzing a situation, they're applying the scientific principles, and then constructing explanations and also solving problems, maybe even local problems that they're seeing too. So again, I think that taking those steps to help get our teachers where they have resources, but also get comfortable and then move forward, I think is good. So I'll stop there, and Jennifer, go ahead if you don't mind to, so we can get into close to our Graves County people.
Great. These next few slides just go into a little bit more specific around what those science and engineering practices are. The next slide is about the cross-cutting concepts, and you'll see that these are looking at not just scientific concepts, but also the ability to think critically, analyze, synthesize, you look at patterns, cause and effects, and so forth. The next slide, please. And I think these are the core ideas around the Kentucky academic standards: the physical science, life science, earth and space, and then that engineering design. Next slide. This blueprint, again, is utilized for test design, form design, and the percentages of items that should be included in each form around these different domains. The other purpose of the blueprint is, again, around instructional information so that teachers have a general idea of how the test is designed and take that to their classroom. And again, Kentucky teachers and educators are involved in developing these percentages. Next slide. As we mentioned, there were refreshed standards in 2023. So in 2025, we had a new assessment that provided different entry points for students. We maintained the alignment to the Kentucky academic standards and provided a more aligned with what we're hearing from the field in how they are approaching science instruction. So we heard that the reading load was more on the previous Kentucky summative assessment, so we reduced that and then provided a broader range of content. So we do listen to the field, we do hear their input, and we receive that and take action upon that. Next slide.
Dr. Stafford, if it would
Yes.
please the board chair, would it be okay if we move on? I think this would be a good spot to allow our friends from Graves County and then maybe continue ours, if it's okay with our board chair, to allow
Absolutely.
our Graves County folks to present, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner and Chair Robinson. I want to introduce now. We're joined today by several from the Graves County team, but I'm going to start with Amanda Henson, she serves as the elementary supervisor of instruction for Graves County Schools, and Alyssa Binkley, who is the secondary supervisor of instruction. And so ladies, I'll turn it over to you to introduce the rest of your team and to get into your experience with implementing K through 12 science instruction.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us today. So I am Amanda Henson, and I'm the elementary instructional supervisor here in Graves County.
I'm Alyssa Binkley. I'm the secondary instructional supervisor.
And my name is Dana Dowdy, and I'm our district's digital learning coach.
And we also have a principal and a few teachers here with us today, and we'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Carrie Cornwell. I am the principal at Graves County Central Elementary, and I was a former fourth grade science teacher.
I'm Anna Ray. I'm one of our high school teachers. I specifically teach physics.
And I'm Lindsay Hargett. I currently teach fourth grade science at Sedalia Elementary.
So we are so excited to share a little bit with you today as to how we are embracing an HQR in our district, and a little bit about the process and how we are doing that to make sure our students are getting the very, very best. So with that, we'll move on to the next slide. So our district and what we have done to address science education in K through 12, this actually is part of our strategic plan. When you see the first part, as a district, we aim to demonstrate excellence in academic achievement through high school engaging experiences and expand learning through district-wide alignment. We did decide to adopt Open SIAD as our district HQIR, and we did that with a team of teachers and really digging in and figuring out what is the best HQIR for our students. District alignment is really important to us, as we have 6 elementary schools that are very transient with students that move in and out of the different schools. And also we feed into 1 middle and then 1 high school. Next slide, please. So this has been a process. Open SIAD units were developed first in the middle school band. So they were developed with 6th through 8th grade. And we started that process in 2020. And our high school started field test in 2020 as well. Now with our 6th grade teachers, we also carried the phenomena base down to our 5th grade, because a lot of our teachers loop and taught 5th and 6th. So even though Open SIAD didn't have units yet developed for that grade level, we went ahead and started implementing some of that teaching. 4th grade started in 2025. And we realize there's gaps, but what we really try to do is let our lead teachers in these areas share in PLCs so that we then can take this approach down to 3rd grade and our primary teachers. And we have professional learning days centered around that, where our lead teachers can share with others. This is the approach to science. This is how we need to be delivering this to our students. And again, the units are not all released. So, they're not released for every grade level yet. And when they are released, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for the kits to be available to purchase. So we're really making sure that even though we may not have exact Open SIAD units ready for those grade levels, we're still using this approach at all grade levels. Next slide, please.
So our implementation plan included starting small, and we wanted to scale it out strategically. And we felt that it was important to work with certain grade levels to really strengthen their instructional alignment. We wanted them to create clear models of success. So when we moved it to different grade levels in the future, we were ready for success in that way when we grew. It's very important to us to and strengthen our practice district-wide. So we want to collaborate within grade level. So we bring those teachers together. They really dig into those units and prepare them, have great dialogue with each other. And it really brings great relationships across the district with our teachers. They build trust and collaboration, and they have a shared purpose in doing this. Also, we want a very great understanding of our HQR and the standards alignment. So we encourage collaborative study on that HQR along with our state standards to build clarity, coherence, and a shared understanding of that HQR. for our classrooms across the district. And finally, we want to identify and address standards gaps with purpose, because we do know when we dig into our HQIR, there may be some gaps in there, and we want to be proactive to identify those and to develop a year-long intentional plan to integrate any supplemental materials, extensions, and any support. So then we know that those standards are covered and our instruction continues seamlessly. You can move on.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about how we support our staff. That includes our principals, teachers, coaches, everyone in our buildings that are helping with the HQIR of Open SciEd. You can move on. Okay, so here's just a couple. In the very beginning, NSTA was very vital. They actually would come into the district and work with our teachers and train them in these units. The units are pretty intensive training. It's about a 2-day training per unit. So you're talking about units, they may teach 4 to 6 units a year. So a 2-day training per each of those units, just learning how to use the kits and learning how to use the curriculum. After NSTA, PIMSR, we would send teachers to those 2-day trainings at PIMSR. And that was really important too. And it is very intentional on those units that the teachers are going to be teaching upcoming in the school year. Our co-op, we're actually lucky enough that our co-op offers some training too for Open SciEd. So if we have new teachers coming in and we need one teacher to go through the training, we can send that teacher to the co-op to help with that. And we're also lucky enough to be part of the RISE Science Leadership Academy this year. So we have teachers at the elementary level, middle school and high school level that are working with other teachers across the state on this curriculum and internalizing lessons and such. A couple years ago, we were also part of the Knowledge Matters campaign. And through that, Open SciEd staff actually came into our district. They spent a day with us and would go into our teachers' classrooms at the middle school and high school. And then they gave us feedback. And it was great feedback. So that was a really cool thing to have the people who help write the curriculum come into our district and give us feedback on how we were implementing it. Okay, next. Okay, so something that's really important that helps it all come together is our PLCs. We do work with our principals too, first of all, on knowing what they're looking for when they go in looking at the HQIR. So we do work with our principals on that. But with our teachers, at the middle school and high school level, we have monthly PLCs. We have a planning PLC every other week and then a data PLC. During that planning PLC, they're really working on internalizing those units, those lessons, and seeing where those gaps are and how they need to proceed in teaching that lesson. Maybe where some misconceptions might come in for the students, how they can tackle that ahead of time, just making those plans ahead of time, thinking like the student would. In those data PLCs, they're looking at the data that the students have provided them, maybe summative, maybe formative. And then this year, we've actually adopted pair assessment, which has been really good on us seeing how the students are working towards mastery. Let's get some good data in there that can lead to some great conversations in our PLC meetings. Grade 4 teachers, they're not as lucky to be in the same building. So they're across 6 different buildings. So we do try to bring them in together so they can have that time to still internalize that lesson and collaborate, having those good conversations about what might to expect, because they're new to the curriculum since they just adopted it this year officially. And then again, working with our teacher leaders. We have teacher leaders in every building that are the experts in the storylines and that phenomena-based approach. So we rely on them to help lead in their building. Okay, next.
So like she said, we will bring our teachers together for PLCs, and here are our 4th grade teachers. They have come to our central office, and they've really worked hard on unit and lesson internalization. So once they are getting ready to start a new unit, they're really breaking that unit down, looking for the big picture, how the standards are embedded. They're looking at that end of the unit assessment and identifying those expectations. They're really gaining an overall sense of what that unit and what those lessons mean. They have fantastic conversations. They really dig deep and understand that unit and those lessons and how to teach it to the students. It's just really great to see. They really create a good bond over that. They have great discussion, like I said, and they feel more confident as they go in and teach those units. So it's been really great. You can go on.
Okay, now we're gonna have some teachers and our principal share some experiences about how this has impacted students.
Next slide, please.
Okay, so this phenomena-based approach has really been helpful in teaching the next generation of scientists. They're gaining real-life skills and application through that anchoring phenomena and hands-on experiences. So those two photos there are pictures of my students engaging in Open SciEd hands-on experiences. It's not just hands-on, it's minds-on too. So they're having to apply the phenomena, the question that's asked at the beginning of the unit, and they're continuously working through that. They're able to connect to their lives at home in school. So a big thing is we learn about this phenomena and then we are connecting it back to home. I'm working on weathering and erosion right now, so they're able to make a connection to, oh, well, I see a field that has some weathering and erosion happening to it, or I have a creek, or they're buying in because they can relate to it. It introduces rigorous content in a fun and engaging way. My kids love it. Any day that we don't do it, they are so sad. And it also allows them to have social emotional skills and 21st century skills. They learn to disagree and have discourse and be comfortable being wrong. And they gain the knowledge from each other rather than from me. So their favorite thing to do is a scientist circle. We sit in a circle and they get to share their ideas. They ask me every day if we can do it, because they love learning from each other and they love having an open space where they feel like their opinion and their scientific thought is valued.
Okay, next slide, please.
Okay, and then at the high school approach, it has really been a shift, and we've worked really hard to kind of revamp exactly how we're teaching the science, because we're getting away from that lecture topic by topic traditional instruction and going towards really putting it in the students' hands, which coincides really beautifully with the Danielson framework that teachers are evaluated using, because the learning is very student driven. They're asking questions with the real phenomenon, and they're asking deeper questions of, why am I seeing this phenomenon this way? How exactly is this working? It's going deeper into just your surface level observations with things to really understand the science behind why things are happening around them. And then instead of the teachers delivering the content, we're more of just a supporting role and a coaching role in trying to navigate the students building those explanations. Because the students are the ones coming up with, what do we need to know to understand this better? What are some potential investigations that we can do? So it's really sense-making focused with this type. And then at the end, we can, now that we have those specific pieces of evidence, the students can then start to build their explanations and use what they've learned to defend these big ideas in science. They're talking and engaging with each other, not just to the teacher. And what's really exciting is that we're seeing this engagement across ability levels. It's not just your top performing science students that just kind of memorize and move on. It's really doing the science, challenging each other, viewing your mistakes as a part of figuring things out, and kind of learning more from your mistakes to retain it longer.
Okay, next slide, please.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm the principal, and this is what you want to see. This is what you want to see in your classrooms. So, I mean, I love my building being full of the students doing the work. The students are doing the thinking. The students are doing the collaborating. They're working together. And it is a shift. It is a shift for our teachers. You know, as they're learning this, it's a different way to teach. But it is like Lindsay said, it is fun. The kids love it. They're engaged, they're active, but they're learning, and they're learning through their mistakes, and they're learning through working with each other. And it's amazing to see. And I mean, you can see their faces there. I mean, that was a marble, that was a collision type unit that they did. And I mean, it went on several days, and there were things they would test, and then they would try, and they would do something different. And it's all those soft skills you want your kids to learn too, but it's all that deep critical thinking too. And it just makes you excited to be in classrooms when you see this deep of learning happening. So that's kind of my experience as a principal. Like I said, I was a fourth grade teacher, and I loved the hands-on approach. Open SIAD wasn't available when I was teaching, but I always have been interested in the hands-on and putting the learning in the kids' hands, and this has been great for my teacher and for our students.
Yes, and we'll wrap it up by saying it is a shift, and it is a shift in instruction, but it's the shift that's right for students. And we see that in the classroom. So it takes professional learning, and it takes our teachers having that growth mindset. And luckily in Graves County, we've got teachers with that, and they want to do what's best for students every day. So that's a little bit about what we're doing here in Graves County.
Wow, I just want to say, can we just bottle you up and take you everywhere to help us all see learning in science in a way that really embraces all students and gives all students a chance to know that they can learn science. I mean, there are loads of hands that are up now, so please, I hope you can bear with us and stay with us as we engage with you longer. Julie. I'm sorry, Julie, could you and state your name and where you're from?
Yeah, I think Lou is before me.
Go ahead.
Okay. So Julie Pyle, I'm in Northern Kentucky. So love this, absolutely love this. Just kind of two curious questions. One, do you see a shift in teachers in other instructional areas moving to this type of teaching model? And two, are you seeing students starting to see themselves more in science pathways, like as careers type things, because they're becoming more engaged?
Absolutely. Carrie, do you want to take that first question?
I'll take that one. I am seeing that. I'm seeing that across my building. Our social studies classrooms actually have taken kind of that approach, which they already do some of the claim and reasoning that we were doing in science in both social studies, but we're seeing much more of that collaborative approach, that deeper there. My science and social studies teachers are working together on doing some things together, because we just have one fourth grade science teacher and one fifth grade social studies teacher. So they kind of work together. And so I'm seeing that branch out there. I'm also seeing some of this approach in our STEM class. So we have STEM as a specials rotation that the kids go to every third day. So I'm seeing that there. So yes, I definitely have seen that. A big push in my building is creative teaching, collaborative teaching, that kind of thing. And so it is branching out across our building.
And I'll just speak a little bit to the pathway part.
Yeah.
We are seeing an increase in girls wanting to be in our engineering pathway, so that's always a good thing. And then I would say our medical pathway seems to get bigger and bigger every year. So we are seeing a little bit of a shift there too, but it might be our elementary doing STEM combined with our science. I think it's a little bit of everything that we're doing. So
fabulous. Harold, let me call on you. Introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from.
I'm Harold McKinney from Danville, Kentucky. I've got a quick question for you. Do you get any feedback from your students that they bring back from their parents as they go home and talk about this? You know, if you read Jesse Stewart's Split Cherry Tree, that story, it's interesting. What kind of feedback do you get from parents?
So Lindsay, do you mind taking this question?
Sure. I get feedback from parents at parent-teacher conferences just about how much they love science. I feel like it used to be an area of study where kids didn't feel successful. And this really levels the playing field for all kids. There's not a day that goes by that students specifically don't come up to me and say, I can't wait to see what we're doing in science today. And the parents are just really appreciative of that, because it allows them to be independent. It allows them to question. It allows them to wonder. And that's what we want in kids in any age, is to have that sense of wonder still. So that's kind of some of the feedback I get from some of my parents.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you.
Dr. Todd.
A couple of questions. How did this fire get started? Who initiated it? And
Okay, I'll take this one. So really, when the science standards changed, the shift, we knew we have to do something different. So then we started looking, and a lot of times our teachers in the elementary world, sometimes they are just all content areas. So they needed a base, a foundation, and very willing, but they were appreciative of an HQ hour. So it showed them what they need to do and where they need to go. So again, we kind of looked at Open SIAD and what units were released first. And in our district, we have 6th grade in the elementary school. I don't think we mentioned that before, but really getting our 6th grade teachers trained in that, it allowed it to spread down to our primary grades. And then obviously at the middle and high school also. So really adopting that. And like anything, change is hard. But I think when teachers saw the success students were having, and they saw how excited students were about learning, that does somewhat spread.
I've got one other follow-up question. I can't tell you how wonderful this is to see it catch on, and the table conversations at home. I know you changed from experience I've had. How did your students perform on the last standard test?
So I'll let Alyssa take that one.
Well, we're definitely growing. We're not where we want to be yet. You know, we have some very veteran teachers that have used this curriculum for years. And then we have some newer teachers who it's still new to them. So, you know, we work through those challenges every year. But we did see growth this past science test, which we were all excited to see. And, you know, we're still aiming to grow every other time. So we want to reach the top.
Yeah. Yeah, I really do feel we've got to find out this. We had fairly low rankings, but where were the kids that did score high, and what were they exposed to? Why did they score high? And so, but I applaud what you're doing. And I'm Lee Todd from Hopkins County originally, so I like that neck of the woods. Thank you very much.
Holly.
Well, I really like this neck of the woods, Lee Todd, because this is where this is my stomping grounds. I get to spend time in Graves County schools with my work at Murray State, and they're impressive over in Graves County for sure. They do well in reading, math, and everything. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. I know you have like an elementary science teacher, right? Like I know, like Lindsay, what grade do you teach? Or are you multiple grades?
I teach 4th grade right now.
Okay.
But I've
4th.
taught 1st grade last year.
Okay. And so you, like, the children come to you for science, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I feel like that's a neat model in the sense that all those materials and the space and all of that, it probably really lends for the ability to do that, because you've got that space and materials all in there. How do you see this filtering down to K3 with, you know, within like all the science and math that they're, I mean, like reading and math focus, like what are your plans for getting those K3 teachers really on board?
Sure. So I'll speak to that a little bit. So I think that it all goes back to that dedicated time devoted to science and making sure that we have that built in our master's schedules. And then, of course, resources. And I'll just be honest, they're pretty expensive, getting teachers what they need and the kids. So that sometimes is a little bit of the challenge. And we've tried different things in Graves County. Like I said, we have 6 elementary schools where we share kits and we try to get them from one school to the other, and just to be able to have those resources we need. But certainly just making sure that it is a priority and having our lead teachers like Lindsay share at those PLCs with our K-3 teachers. You know, this is what I need. This is how we prepare them for fourth grade and for the next level. So just really making sure that that's devoted and going in and being part of those classrooms during that devoted science time. And we're always great to let our teachers visit one another. So, you know, it may be where teachers need to go visit Lindsay's room and learn from her. And I know Lindsay's willing to go down to other grades and model lessons, you know, for that first grade classroom if needed. So really just making sure that collaboration is there.
Well, you all are doing wonderful work. And Carrie, thank you for letting our Murray State students come in, because that's really important too. We need the next generation of teachers seeing this and being a part of it. So thank you for all that you're doing. It makes me very proud to be from Western Kentucky.
Thank you for your kind words.
Well, you should be proud. Makes us all proud. Lou, please introduce
Yes, thank you.
yourself.
Just first, hearty congratulations, followed by a quick question. I loved hearing the smart way that the district has thought about professional development, high quality materials. I've been Googling the Open SciEd, love it that it's from the National Science Teachers Association. Love the connection to Portrait of a Learner and those soft but real hard competencies and skills that employers are going to be looking for in the 21st century. So I think it's just all coming together in such a clear package there in Graves County, and to all credit to Dr. Todd for really pushing hard on this question about how can we approach science with the real deficits that we're seeing right now. Lots of reasons why it's happening, but Graves County is obviously a great model for how we can move forward and start making those gains. So congratulations. I thought maybe Holly was going to scoop my question. She and I are both in colleges of education. So what best advice would you guys offer to colleges of education to help better prepare teachers who come into the field ready to teach the way, I mean, with the high levels of student agency and engagement, and it's not your granddaddy science program anymore. So I think Lindsay said she'd take that question, and I promised to take it back to UK, and I know Holly will take it back to Murray.
So I was a graduate of Murray State. Miss Bloodworth was actually one of my professors whenever I was there a couple of years ago.
Well, there's the answer.
So honestly, my piece of advice would be just to connect with your alum that are currently out in the field, and have them come in and maybe teach your students a lesson, or maybe have some students come in and watch how you teach. I know that our district is really open to visitors. I'm open to visitors specifically, and I know that I would really love to help my alma mater the best way that I can, and that is showing them what works and what's effective and why it's effective in the field that we're in.
I love it. Thanks. We need to tear down those walls between what happens in pre-service and what happens in in-service. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Steve, introduce yourself, please.
Yes, Steve Trimble. I'm from Johnson County, and I love what you're doing there. But it sounded like it took a lot of professional development for teachers to make this change in mindset and change in teaching. And I'm like Dr. Todd, he's always concerned about teachers being trained in the way to teach the best way from science. But talk a little bit about professional development and teachers preparing themselves for this.
Absolutely. So like Alyssa mentioned, each one of these units take about 2 full days of professional learning and really internalizing the unit and internalizing the lesson. So making sure that we provide that space for teachers to do that. And obviously we don't have enough PD days in the school year to deliver that for each unit that we need to do. So we devote professional development money for extra training for teachers because that's important to us. So I think that's a great use of our instructional money and our resources with our different pockets, just to make sure that we are providing that time and that space. And we let teachers know this is going to be messy at first. We're going to visit your classrooms, but it's not to evaluate. It's to let us learn how to support you. You know, and that is a process, and just letting them know it's okay. We want you to deliver this, but we know it's going to look messy at times. Alyssa, you want to add anything to that?
Well, I was just thinking that we definitely do a lot of lesson internalization, because sometimes it may work out that the unit training is not at the right time, but we've already started the unit per se, maybe. So we rely heavily on those teacher leaders. Like Anna is a wonderful teacher leader in the high school. She's been doing Open Side from the beginning. So we rely heavily on them to also be able to help coach those other teachers that maybe haven't been able to get to the training yet, but they're going to the training. So that's and Anna, feel free to add anything from a professional development side since you've been in it from the beginning.
Yeah, and I would love to say it's easy, but it's not, because these units are very long and they're very dense, and it can become overwhelming, especially when it's your first year teaching. So giving yourself grace and just understanding that you're not going to be perfect even after 1 or 2 years. It's going to take 3 to 5 before you really start to feel that confidence of what you're doing. And that's scary to some teachers, honestly. And it was scary for me, but I just now feel like I'm starting to get a firm foundation, like my feet under me, where I can breathe a little bit and really engage a little deeper with the students, because there's a lot of these teacher moves embedded with the unit that are new, a new way of doing it, and letting go of your control as a teacher and letting the students lead is a big shift to get used to as well.
Wow. Commissioner.
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you to our friends here from Graves County. I have a comment and then a question. My first comment is I can remember my first year of teaching a new course, like for AP Calculus. And I didn't feel comfortable till that third year. I didn't feel like my feet were under me until that third year of teaching a course where I felt, okay, I can adapt a little better. I understand where this is going. So I applaud you for the patience, because it can be very frustrating in that first year when you're at you're implementing something new, or maybe even teaching a new course or taking on a new grade level. So I think that's something that I want to applaud each of you for, is that patience and then that persistence to say this is what's best for kids, and we're willing to go through the struggle. So that's my first comment. The second is a question. You mentioned the work with WKEC, and it's good to see Western, the co-op there that is providing some training. So my question is, how have you had the opportunity, or maybe other districts that have called you, wanting to work with you, wanting to see what's going on, and what can you see in other parts with WKEC, or maybe across the Commonwealth, of how that people want to partner with you, or you've had the opportunity to share?
Yeah, actually, the person that teaches the things at the co-op is from Graves County, so we're able to have that relationship with her too, which is great. She's willing to come in if we need her to come in and observe and see how we're doing. So that's something, and we actually get calls all the time. I get emails quite a bit from other districts that are like, "Hey, can we come see?" And I had my fabulous middle school teacher, and she moved to Ohio. So sometimes I'm kind of like, yes, but I've got a new person teaching it. So they're welcome to come, but they're going to see the struggles. They're not going to see an experienced veteran teacher, and just letting the districts know that there's a difference. There's going to be a difference in watching Anna teach, who's done it for 4 to 5 years, versus a brand new teacher doing it. So we're very open to the other districts when they want to come watch that this is what you're going to get to see. So,
and we love visitors here in Graves County. We want to help others, but we want to showcase our teachers and all that they do, because they're doing really amazing things in the classroom for kids.
Thank you. Dr. Fletcher? Antonio.
I wanted to show my reaction there. I wanted to clap. And so again, anytime that you're willing to share, and I think that's one of the things I want to emphasize about our districts across the Commonwealth. My first year as a superintendent, first few years as a principal versus the end, I love seeing the collaboration, and that grows more and more, whether you're in Northern Kentucky with the Ignite Institute, or you're in Eastern Kentucky with districts collaborating, or Western Kentucky, and let's share this what's making a difference in our schools. So again, I love seeing that change, and that let's grow together in that collaboration as we move forward. We're not really in competition with each other. We're all about kids and how can we lift each other up. So thank you for that.
Please, Alfonso, correct me.
I'm gonna try to speak the best I can, 'cause I'm still struggling with a cold. First of all, congratulations to the people in Gray County. Like it really looks great and really makes me feel happy to see to hear these stories of success, especially because my very first 4 years of teaching career, I spent those in Christian County, so I know that neck of the woods. So yay. So my question I have a question that is twofold. One, I know based on what I have been checking on Kentucky School Report Card, I know that the percentage of English language development students, multilingual learners, I know that it's not too high in Graves County, like maybe like 4%. But I'm curious as to how do you make accessible those lessons to students who are speakers of languages other than English, one. And two, I wonder, or I would be very curious to see how those efforts when you make science accessible in another language, especially in the terms that you all have described it through your presentation as focusing on the why and the how and letting the students explain. I hope that you understand that those are the perfect combinations for multilingual learners precisely to build their fluency skills and communication skills. So when that happens, do you see also a correlation in English native speakers in regard of ELA skills as well?
Okay, so actually our population of EL learners is small overall in Graves County, but it's very concentrated at Central Elementary, and Carrie happens to be the principal there. So I'm gonna let Carrie take that one.
Great.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm the principal there, here. So we had about 30 in our EL program this year that took access. However, we have many more EL families here that have already, some of them have exited out of that program. So I have about probably 45 students that have English as second language here. So that's several in a class. So we do immersion here. So I mean they're in gen ed just like everyone else. I do have a full-time EL teacher and a full-time EL assistant that we build their schedules. So they do offer assistance in reading classrooms, in math classrooms, but also in 4th grade, 5th grade, we do put them in those content areas as well. So we make sure that they're in there when they're doing these Open SciEd lessons, they're in there, working with them. Our EL assistant is bilingual, so they are speaking to them in their native language part of the time, working through that discovery. Vocabulary is heavy in those. The hands-on approach is, more kid-friendly. They are able to participate like their peers. Most of ours do come with some English. Most of ours are not completely newcomers. I've only got 2 newcomers in the building this year, but any of that, I do agree with you, that hands-on approach, that collaborative, that working with their peers is so good for their language, their ELA, and their thinking. So yes, I think it has a huge impact on them.
A follow-up question, if you don't mind me, do you also integrate the EL teachers into the PLCs of those science teachers so that they can collaborate in lesson constructing and unit constructing and assessment development?
So our EL teacher does participate in the instructional PLCs. Yes, she doesn't always have planning with every single teacher. So she doesn't always plan every single lesson with every teacher in the building, but she does attend the PLCs, which we have in my building on Fridays, and they're always instructionally based. So, some days they're around lesson prepping for science. Some days it may be lesson prepping on, another curriculum we're working on, our math, for example. We always have some instructional focus there, and she is a member of that.
And as a result of that, all that environment that you all are creating in your district, have you started to see some results in areas such as ELA, since you are creating precisely those structures for students to be able to talk about science, not just demonstrate what they know. Have you seen results happening in content areas such as ELA?
Well, I mean, as a district, or as a school, I'm sorry, as a school, we had a big jump in our reading score last year as measured on KSA. We had a pretty substantial jump in science. We exited 11 students out of the ELL program last year based on access. So that was the biggest group that we've ever exited in 1 year. So, I mean, as a school, we're making gains in all of those areas. This year, they mentioned we're doing peer assessments, so we're having some common assessments in the district a few times a year, and those science scores are improving each time. I think we're at round 4 right now, 3 or 4, but each time those are getting a little higher for our building. So all of those things are showing gains in growth.
Very good. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
This is amazing. Graves County has taken us to school on what it means to make our most ambitious curriculum objectives accessible for each and every student. It doesn't get any better than that, except when you add the cherry on top that teachers and the energy of teachers to fix this instructional process so that that objective is achieved. Then you've got all the leverage in the world, and we can't thank you enough for being willing to share with us, because actually you inspire our ambitions. And the only additional question I would ask you to think on this, if you have suggestions to us about how we can leverage what you know to make your example one that inspires others and encourages them to pick up that banner of innovation and get to work and make it happen. Because I know there are lots of teachers out there who want to see this kind of energy and this kind of liberated professional practice, their own experience. And I cherish that for you. I know that you are interested in seeing others have that opportunity, and we are open to your suggestions. Don't hold back.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having us today. We're so glad to join you, and y'all come see us sometimes. We would love to have you here in Graves County.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Board members, I have to point out that we are 6 minutes from our scheduled time to end this meeting, and that time, it gets to be kind of a governor for us. Dr. Poe, I think that's your hand that's up.
Yeah, my hand was up, and if Carrie, you're still on. My question is to you all, because first of all, I want to applaud the great job that you're doing in teaching, and I think there's a lot of other great teachers across the state doing some similar work. The question that I have, because I think that you're doing very well, and you would rate your students doing very well in science from the teaching, from the observations that you're doing. My fundamental question in all this has been, and I'm asking you as the expert back to KD, why do you feel that your students are doing very well, proficient and distinguished per much in science, but we're not showing up on our state test scores? Not Graves County in general, but just why is there this disconnect from the great things that you're seeing in classrooms, but our state testing isn't showing all the great things that our teachers are doing, from your opinion as a teacher in the district?
I lived it. So I have been in this role. This is my 3rd year to be principal here. And before that, I was a science teacher for goodness knows, 8 or 9 years. So I've lived the different science standards. I was 4th grade science. I've lived science accountability and science assessment. I've lived it day in and day out. And I mean, as a teacher, I wanted my students to do well. They did well. It did take me, as any instructor, I mean, it took a couple years to kind of understand how the assessment was going to test our kids, what it was looking for, how I needed to teach in that approach. I feel like So 3 years ago, when I was the teacher, I feel like I had the most success when I really continue to dive into this phenomenal based collaborative model, but also made sure I gave my kids plenty of time to have the opportunity to not only think, talk through their thinking, their learning, but they had to have time to write it. They had to have time to work through. They needed to write. If it's asking them to produce a claim and come up with evidence, that's fantastic to do that as a team and to be collaborative. But I had to give them time as well to be able to do some of that and struggle through some of that on their own. They needed to be able to find their own evidence part of the time and be able to be a proficient writer, communicator, to get their thoughts and their understanding shown, because they may know it, they may know what they want to do next steps, but they had to be able to do that. So I had to kind of balance that. I felt like, yes, we're collaborative. Yes, we're very deep in these phenomenal based approaches, but I did take time a couple of times a week that it was kind of individualized as well as the writing piece to make sure they were able to stand on their own to explain their learning. And we would do that one day and then come back as the group. So I think that piece was important to me. Continuing to get teachers to understand this is not, even though there's multiple choice on there, this is not a knowledge, just basic knowledge, multiple test at all, multiple choice test. I mean, this is not, do we know what part of the plant, makes food for the plant? We don't, it's not that easy. I mean, it is the depth and the explanation, and that's what we want. And so they have to learn to even give assessments in their class that are very higher end, deep thinking, multiple choice questions, multiple select, giving them the opportunity to write. They've got to switch gears. This is not basic knowledge. And this curriculum that we're using, plus just that mindset, just what's best for kids. We're a big Kagan school here, so we expect the collaboration, in all areas, but just that piece, I mean, it's hard. It's hard standards. It's a hard test, and those kids can do it. And I mean, I lived it, and my kids are doing it here. They can do it. It's just, it's a shift. And a lot of people, I'm going to be honest, don't stay in fourth grade science. So you got a lot of change sometimes, a lot of change in teachers. Well, then you start again. But once you get them in there that learn how, like Lindsay, like my Keeley, when they learn what they're doing and they with it, that's what's best for kids.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate your opinion and honesty there. Thank you.
Yeah. And I met you guys just a few months ago. We were able to attend for the Blue Ribbon celebration. Central Elementary was a Blue Ribbon. So I appreciate you guys talking to us again. And Amanda is correct. We do love visitors. I know we're far down here, but come see us. Anything you want to see, our building's always open.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
You are
Now,
welcome.
board members, we have really had a treat today, a very provocative one. We would now go into board sharing, but I'm going to ask that in the interest of time, we focus our thoughts and share as to the provocation that this last presentation may have provided for subsequent conversation, subsequent action. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to demonstrate. As we have listened to this presentation, I am really curious about how we can further incentivize and cultivate that more symbiotic relationship between practice and educator preparation. It is clear that the way we learn science, perhaps in college, is not the way we're going to teach it when we get into practice. How do we bridge that so that our novice practitioners enter ready to hit the ground as a novice, but not needing remediation? I think that's an important question. Other comments, sharing, observation.
This is Lee. Didn't raise my hand, but I really like to get some information that we could use to go to the legislature and say, this stuff works. We need professional development support to get this going, because I don't think we've got it. And one question I'd like for somebody who's a mathematician to figure out, we have 6% scoring on this high school test. How many bodies is that? Is that 1,500? Is it 200? Is it 100? And where the heck are they? I mean, can we take some data to the legislators and say, these scores are low? I was talking to the legislator the other day and they said, boy, those science scores are really low. Are they going to SAT so they can make things look better? I said, no, that's not at all the case. So we've got some controversy out there about these low scores. We need to be able to combat it, if we can, with intelligence. And if you had every school doing what these folks are doing, I have to believe those tests would be, test scores would be a lot higher. So I'd like to get some statistics to use to try to leverage more funding for what is needed to make these teachers successful.
Thank you, Dr. Todd. Julie?
So Dr. Todd kind of stole it there for me. So I was going to just emphasize, it really highlights the importance of investing in professional development for our teachers. And that's not something that can be skipped, and we need to put more into it. The other thing, it highlighted the need for collaboration for teachers in that space with the PLCs. I mean, we know from John Hattie's work, the #1 impact on teacher or on student success is teacher collective efficacy. And that just kind of shows that. And then the last comment there with the writing and the importance of bringing it all together, that individually the students need to also be able to show their learning through writing, demonstration of writing. That was phenomenal. I compliment Graves. That was phenomenal.
Informing our advocacy and really getting the language right to make the case for the kind of practice that incorporates continued professional development, professional learning for our staff seem to be really spot on issues. Wow. I suspect that we'll be thinking about this going forward. I will alert the board that we will be continuing our efforts to drill down on issues of student achievement, including perhaps incorporating more committee work dedicated to that. We will discuss the possibility of reviewing and amending some of our committee assignments going forward. And board members, as always, please stay alert for our legislative updates that come certainly weekly, but in these next few weeks, I suspect it will be more frequent than that. Are there other comments before I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll just have a comment. And I echo what everybody said. And I guess that last part, what you just said there, Chair, I'd like to see in our committee meetings, maybe in our state schools committee meeting, a continuation of some of this conversation that we had here and around the presentations that we didn't get through, and maybe some on the professional development that is occurring within KDE. Going back to Dr. Todd's question about what we could support or not. And as Julie just said, what I heard from the individual is our students know a lot of science. Right now, we got to get to the transfer of what's in the individual students to the group, because even when I look at these test scores of our blue ribbon schools, we're only in the 30 percentile. So to me, there's still some type of disconnect that I would like to try to find out, that I just think our students know more science than we're giving them credit for. So my real question is, how do we get about this in our accountability cycle? So I'd like to have that conversation maybe in the state schools committee, and don't prepare any more presentation. The presentation's there. Let's get into some more questions that we didn't have time to really dig into. So if you could think of that for our agenda in our state schools committee to tackle into.
Excellent, excellent. Other comments? I then would thank the board for participating in this really, really instructive and productive meeting. It's just jaw-dropping amazing. And I remind you that our next meeting, our next regular meeting is scheduled for April 8 and 9 at the State Board in Frankfurt. And at this time, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn.
This is Steve Trimble, and I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Steve. Is there a second?
Holly Bloodworth,
Kenny, I
second.
second.
Okay, Holly, you got in there with the second. Thank you very much. Lucas Ann, would you please call the roll?
Holly Bloodworth,
Holly Bloodworth votes yes.
Harold McKinney,
Harold McKinney votes yes.
Justin Pate, Julie Pyle,
Julie Pyle, yes.
Randy Poe,
Randy Poe, yes.
Sharon Robinson,
Sharon Robinson, yes.
Lee Todd. Believe you're muted, Dr. Todd.
Lee Todd, yes.
Thank you. Steve Trimble
Steve Trimble, yes.
and Lou Young.
Lou Young, yes.
Voting is complete.
We stand adjourned. Thank you again.